Hey guys, it's Jeff from CapX Cards back with another vintage card grade reveal. And this one's a little bit different because this is my first ever SGC submission. Now, if you're new to the channel, I typically submit my cards to PSA through my local GameStop. I have done some individual submissions to PSA directly, but generally I use the GameStop option. And it's also important to note that I just started this sort of grading journey in the summer with my son. I had been focused on vintage cards, things that I was familiar with, primarily 70s and 80s across different sports. He, of course, is into the ultra modern stuff, but I have had a real struggle with ROI on vintage cards. It's been quite a learning process. And in cards that look really good, say for 1979, just to pick a year, by the time they go to grading, they're being measured, at least in my opinion, they are being measured on the same standards as an ultra-modern card, which is fine. However, very few 1979 cards are going to compare to the near mint counterparts of today. Now, all that being said, one of the things I really wanted to try was SGC for vintage cards because, I've read casually that perhaps they understand vintage cards better. They might spend more time on them, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's all speculation. No one knows for sure. But they were high on my list of before I give up on all these vintage cards, and this work that I've done, let's see what happens if I submit to SGC. So that's what this video here is today. I submitted 5 cards back in mid-November. I think officially they were received at SGC on November 20th, and I'll be getting them back sometime today on January 20th. So 60 calendar days. Technically, SGC's website says 15 to 20 business days, something like that. But in the time that my cards were sent in or sat in the factory, of course, PSA purchased SGC, the whole company. So that was kind of weird because you didn't know what was going to happen with the existing submissions. Then we also had the holidays, which if you think about, people take a lot of time off on the holidays at any workplace. So I'm sure that contributed to the delays, but certainly was not 15 to 20 business days on this turnaround. However, the 60 days in theory is faster than what you would typically get submitting to PSA. Now, I myself have had pretty good luck at GameStop between 60 and 70 calendar days for almost all of my submissions. I'm sure the holidays will drag some of those out. I have several still in the hopper. So I just wanted to call that out for those wondering about turnaround times, at least, from my experience so far. All right, so let's hop into the cards. I don't have them in my possession yet. They're being shipped, but SGC does provide photos, so I'm going to be using those photos off of their website of the cards themselves, and then we'll take a look at what I paid and what is the potential ROI for this 5-card submission. All right, first up, 1969 Topps All-Star Rod Carew. I personally love these Sporting News All-Stars. I've done, I think, 3 or 4 of them across different names. You can see that this one got a 7. Generally speaking, my original plan with vintage cards was to target ones that could potentially get an 8. There's a lot of room for most of these, if you do get an 8, to get them graded and have some ROI or some equity, so to speak, whether you were to sell or keep them. In this case, the 7 is not quite there. Obviously, you can see the centering from left to right and top to bottom is slightly off, but as far as colors, generally speaking, corners and all that, this was a really nice card, just not good enough to get past a grade of 8. All right, next up we have a 1977 Bruce Sutter rookie card. This is a really cool card too. Going to be similar to the Carew, great colors, good surface, pretty good colors, or excuse me, pretty good corners, maybe not laser sharp like a ultra modern card. And of course, you're going to have the centering. It's very difficult to find vintage cards that are perfectly centered, and that's no different here. You can see top to bottom, left to right. Right off the bat, when you submit this card, it's definitely not going to be a 10 just on centering alone. And this might have had, I see a little chip here. So obviously some edge wear. But, the big thing that stands out is, of course, the centering. All right, next up, and I really love this card, this Johnny Bench Sporting News All-Star from 1970. This card is got a 7. And even with the 7, this one will still be worth a few bucks just because of the popularity of Johnny Bench. Also, I live in Cincinnati, so it's a very good place to live if you are going to keep and or sell this card. I was really happy when I purchased this one. You have a gray border, so you're going to get a lot of chips and edge wear on a colored border, so I knew I was swimming upstream to start. You obviously have top to bottom centering. Could be an issue as well. But what's funny, if anyone had any knowledge of this particular year, 1970 of Sporting News, very few cards are centered from top to bottom. It's almost like the Sporting News background just kind of drips into the bottom of the card. So you'll be lucky to go across eBay and find any 1970 Topps Sporting News card that has a perfect top to bottom centering. And I think it's because this newspaper background, it just extends a little bit farther than folks are used to from traditional centering. All right, next is a 1977 Topps Leroy Selmon. And this is also a rookie card. I bought 3 or 4 of these at a card show. I knew that this one wasn't, the greatest thing ever, but I was hoping maybe with SGC I could get a 7, or, if I got lucky, I'd get an 8. But I had 3 or 4 of them. They're really, really, really hard to A, find centered, and B, to have a clear picture. So it's like this negative exposure on the image. And you can see as we get closer that mine has a lot of print dots. They look like scratches, but they're really just print dots from the image. So 6.5. Frankly, this was ultimately a throw-in. I'm not super disappointed, and I guess I wouldn't even argue with this grade. All right, last one here, and technically the best of the lot, although an 8 for this 1978 Bernard King rookie still isn't that valuable. Really not that valuable. And I submitted this one because, quite honestly, this is one of the nicest vintage cards that I have purchased and submitted for grading. And interestingly enough, I had submitted this one to PSA, and it got minimum size requirement and sent back to me. So I thought, if we're testing with SGC, I'm just going to send it to them and see what happens. Obviously I measured it myself. I did not see any minimum size issues. And here we go with an 8. Just incredible centering. If you take a look at this set and you just comb through the listings on eBay, you'd be very lucky to find any card from this set centered as nicely as this one is here. Surface is great. It had really sharp corners for the era. So, the 8 is the 8, and we just take it and move on. All right, so let's take a look at the economics or the ROI or whatever you want to say for these cards. I use this spreadsheet for almost every video. This is the price that I paid for each card, including any sort of shipping. Some of these are from eBay, some of these are from card shows. And then the grading cost, which actually is cheaper than PSA, although there's shipping and stuff. I'll change this to 21 like the others, but I do think it costs a little more than that. But regardless, you take, the cost of the card plus the grading fee, and that gives you this column, which is total cost. Then I put the grade, and this says net sale. This is not what the card sold for net sale yet. What I do is I go back. So if I sell a card on eBay and let's just say the net sale was $25, I update that, and then I usually make the color the cell in green so that I know it's like official numbers. This is more or less projection at this point. But the Johnny Bench, I paid $60. Net sale could be $125. We'll see how it goes. I feel like I'm in the right market for that one. Bernard King, $43 total. Net sale is going to be about $29, maybe $35 on a good day. Don't forget that SGC cards, you're losing, maybe 20% on the resale value just because of people's preferences, quite honestly. 69 Carew, total cost of $36. Net sales should land right about there. Leroy Selmon, $32 total. That's, at a 6.5, I'll be lucky to get 10. Bruce Sutter, rookie, $31 cost to me. And unfortunately, at the 7, combined with the SGC, it's probably in the neighborhood of $20 or so net sale. Now, net sale doesn't mean the listing price, right? So this card, any one of these cards is going to list for higher, but by the time eBay takes out fees and whatnot, that's what I'm talking about when I say net sale. All right, so that's my first SGC order. I guess my initial feedback is, it's definitely not 15 to 20 business days. It was a little bit of a nail biter in there when the company got sold before the end of the year, but it's not like I had submitted thousands of dollars worth of cards. Now, what did I think of the order in terms of grades? I guess I would probably say fair or as expected. It is probably the term I would use the most now that I've been doing these vintage cards and I've had several submissions over the past few months. I think internally my mind compares them to other cards that are available. So while my Johnny Bench might be an excellent raw copy, top 1 to 3% maybe of all the raw copies that are left in the world, what I'm seeing is, from a grading standpoint, it's not even close to the top 1 to 3% of all the Johnny Benches that exist. My guess is most of them have already been submitted. But if you're just using eBay and card shows, card dealers to find vintage cards to grade, my guess is they've just all been picked over and there's not much left. So you almost have to find, much like an archaeologist, you really just have to find ones that haven't been touched. So I have one vintage order left, guys. I'm hoping it's ready next week to share on the channel. It is my final vintage submission, at least temporarily, until I do find those cards that have, sort of yet to be uncovered. But this SGC submission was in mid-November, and that was also the time that I started transitioning to ultra-modern cards because I just wasn't having any success in the vintage world. So I've called it out before, but eventually this channel will transition more to ultra-modern and grading those cards. However, we do have one vintage submission left. It's sitting at PSA. It's already been graded. I think it's in the assembly. And then for whatever reason, quality control, at least recently for me, has taken a while to get the full 2 phases of quality control. So we'll see if I have that next week. But anyhow, if you're interested in any of these cards and the other vintage cards I submitted, make sure you check out our eBay store. Link is in the description. And if you have any questions, just let me know. But I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll see you on the next video.